Deputy Healy. Tanáiste, communities across the country are convulsed at Eirgrid's proposals to erect high-voltage 400 kVA overhead power lines. There's huge concern, frustration and anger at the Grid 25 proposal across the Munster counties of Cork, Tipperary, Waterford and the Leinster counties of Wexford, Kilkenny, Carlow and Kildare. Thousands of people, Tanáiste, have turned out at public meetings, and I want to congratulate the various action groups and indeed the legendary Irish cyclist Sean Kelly for his leadership on this issue. This is an intolerable proposal, Tanáiste. It is being and will be resisted. Everybody accepts that this country must have top-quality electrical infrastructure. But what is at issue here is the manner of the delivery of that infrastructure. And what is the proposal? The proposal, Tanáiste, is to erect 750 monster pylons along a 250-kilometre route. These pylons are 45 metres high, 10 times the height of the average bungalow, and will be at 330-metre intervals. And Eirgrid tells us that where possible, they will keep these pylons, these monsters, 50 metres from houses. Residents along these areas will have to live with these on a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week basis, 365-day a year, and indeed a lifetime basis. This proposal will blight the landscape for locals and visitors alike and destroy the tourist industry. In my own constituency of South Tipperary, some of the most scenic areas are affected. The Galtee-Knockmeal Down Valley, the heritage town of Cahir, the Golden Vale into Clonmel, the valley of Slieve-na-Mon, the Shore Valley into Faheen and Carrick-on-Shore and on into Waterford, and indeed the Cumra Mountains, with their special areas of conservation and habitats. Eirgrid is involved in a divide and conquer of residents along these various routes, setting them against one another. And indeed, they are setting neighbours against one another, offering compensation to some and none to others who are equally or in fact more affected. Devaluation of properties and significant health issues are also very significant reasons for opposition to this project. Tanáiste, best international practice is now that these high-voltage power lines must be laid underground and/or underwater. And Denmark is a very good example, but only one of many, where these lines are placed underground. That is obviously technically possible and financially feasible. And Tanáiste, I want to ask you, as the 26th of November next is the closing date for submissions to Eirgrid on this proposal, I want to ask you, will your government defer the closing date for these submissions?
Thank you.
And will your government finally, Tanáiste, suspend this project pending the outcome of a comprehensive feasibility study carried out independently of into the laying of these lines underground and underwater?
Ceann Comhairle, the development and the upgrading of our grid infrastructure, including interconnection with neighbouring electricity systems, is necessary to drive regional economic growth and job creation. Grid 25 is Eirgrid's plan to develop and upgrade the electricity transmission network. It's going to take several years to complete, and it represents an investment of €3.2 billion. It involves extensive work throughout the country, including building 800 kilometres of new power lines and upgrading 2,000 kilometres of existing lines, in effect to double the size of today's grid. The north-south transmission line, for example, is a critical piece of infrastructure since its absence at the moment is costing economies and consumers up to €30 million a year because without it the system is more inefficient. The government has made it a priority to retain the networks in state ownership as a strategic infrastructure to ensure that they are developed and maintained in the interests of the Irish citizens and consumers. It is also government policy that infrastructure investment programmes are delivered at the most cost-efficient and timely way possible on the basis of best available knowledge and informed engagement on the impacts and costs of different engineering solutions. Public acceptance and understanding of the need for new infrastructure is of course critical, and a key part of developing that public confidence is that Eirgrid should adhere to the highest international standards of safety, health and environmental and visual impact and technology choice. The planning process provides the framework for ensuring that necessary standards are met and provides for, both in law and on a non-statutory basis, the consultation with the public is built into that process. Eirgrid has to adhere to national and international standards on health, environment, biodiversity, landscape and safety as an intrinsic part of the environmental impact assessment and planning process. It is required to use the best available advice and expertise and to address and to mitigate any human, environmental or landscape impact in delivering the best possible engineering solutions for our small and still isolated electricity system. The Government does not have a role in directing Eirgrid to particular sites or routes or technologies. This is for Eirgrid itself and for the forward planning process. However, we do expect Eirgrid, in making choices on technologies, routing and mitigation measures, to take account of all relevant national and international standards, to follow best practice, to ensure value for money, and to be informed by detailed consultation at local level. Structured, transparent consultation and information sharing will, we believe, contribute to delivering proper mitigation measures, including protecting landscape and views and reconfiguring and rationalising existing networks.
Thank you. Deputy Healy.
Your support for cannabis.
Thank you, Tanáiste. Tanáiste, what we've heard just now, of course, what we've heard from the Tanáiste is in fact the usual Eirgrid spin. The only consultation, if consultation there is in relation to overhead power lines. They are not prepared to talk or consult in relation to the placing of these lines underground or indeed undersea, which is, as I've said, already best international practice in this area. But there are also, Tanáiste, significant health issues involved here. National and international agencies have pointed to very serious doubts in relation to these overhead power lines. For instance, the Irish expert report in 2007 said there is limited scientific evidence of an association between ELF magnetic fields and childhood leukemia. This does not mean that ELF magnetic fields causes cancer, but significantly, the possibility cannot be excluded.
Sorry, your question, please.
It also the International Agency for Cancer Research says that these fields are possibly carcinogenic to humans, and based on consistent statistical association of high-level residential magnetic fields with the doubling of risk of childhood leukemia. Tanáiste, in view of the fact that Eirgrid cannot guarantee that there are no health issues involved in this, and in view of the fact that there are various both national and international studies that raise very serious and significant doubts and health issues in relation to these overhead lines, in view of these, will the Government adopt and will the Government institute the precautionary principle? A principle that has already been adopted by the EU and the WHO, the World Health Organization, and will the Government ensure that the Eirgrid proposal to erect overhead high-voltage power lines is cancelled and that the transmission takes place through shielded lines underground and undersea in accordance with best international practice? Thank you.
Well, I'm sure as the Deputy is aware, the issue of whether the lines should be overground or underground arose previously in the case of the lines for the Meath-Tyrone power link. And in line with the commitment that we gave in the programme for government, the Minister for Communications, Energy and Natural Resources on the 5th of July 2011 announced an international commission of experts to review and to report within 6 months on the cost and case for undergrounding all or part of the Meath-Tyrone 400 kV power link. After considering the merits of overhead and underground options, the report's the report notes that there is no single right solution and that technical solutions must be project-specific. The report did not recommend any particular technical option, but it did recommend against wholly undergrounding an alternating current cable. It provided its own expert views on the feasible technology options available for consideration for the Meath Tyrone project, including high-voltage direct currency technology, given the changes in technology, suppliers and costs in recent years. In that context, and I'm quoting from it, the Commission estimated that the cost of implementing the project as a HVDC underground cable option would be 3 times the cost of the traditional overhead line option, while noting that cost estimates are always uncertain. In relation to the health issues, the number of national and international health and scientific agencies have reviewed more than 30 years of research into electromagnetic fields, and none of these agencies has concluded that exposure to EMF from overhead power lines are a cause for long-term adverse effects. In October 2005, there was a World Health Organization convened an international expert panel to review the scientific literature on the biological effects of exposure to extremely low frequency fields. There were also, in March 2007, the Department of Communications, Marine and Natural Resources assembled a panel of independent scientists to review EMF and radio frequency research. The position was restated again by the Office of the Chief Scientific Advisor in a report into possible health effects of exposure to electric and magnetic fields in July 2010. So there is quite a degree of both national and international health reviews of the likely effects, none of which, Deputy Healy, reach the kind of conclusions that you have put on record here.
Thank you. We now move